YouTube Zodiacs, what's good? Is your favorite Gemini? KashDaGemini back with another video, back with episode 20 of the Cashing Out Show. Today we do have a very special guest. We have JP in the building, who was actually was I guess I could say I had asked after the after episode was it 19, I think, or 18, can't remember. Episode 18. Milcar said, "Hey man, I got somebody special for you that I feel like you should reach out for. Very talented." And I'm like, "Okay, I most definitely will, man." So this is what we have here for episode 20. And how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. Good to be on. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, no doubt, man, no doubt. I had actually checked out a little bit of your work and stuff after the recommendation, and we all felt like after episode 18 with the mill car, it was like you almost had a different appreciation for artists. I have a buddy who's an artist, Victor Garduno, and he's drawn a lot of like arts and stuff for like Superman Hush, that a lot of collectors have actually used behind their statues and stuff. um, but like getting to see somebody talk about the details and stuff, like we're talking about fingers. Like I'd never realized that like the XM Studios Scarecrow only had three fingers, and he was telling me about how he wasn't able to make it scarier because the art director didn't want it like to be too fearful and stuff. It was just things I had as a collector. I'm just like, hey, this looks good. Like here's my money, but I'm never gonna look at, what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, and I think he addressed this whenever you're dealing with studios and kind of mainstream stuff, you know, particularly someone like Amilcar who is a creative force and his mind is a lot further than what you see, right? So
Yeah,
you're getting, you know, 50 to 65% of his potency, you know, and in some cases for the art director in the project, that's all you need. But yeah,
mm-hmm.
and he's a person that is uniquely creative. Um, one of the ways we connected is because his background is so different, and there was a kind of co-resonance with my own background in that we're both from overseas, and essentially our lives were shaped by the Cold War divisions in the world, right?
Oh
So
wow.
he grew up in Cuba, being exposed to Eastern Bloc content, right? So the source of his creative imagination is completely foreign to what certainly in America was seen or whatever. So even when he comes
Yeah.
into this new stuff, he's bringing it such a new flavor. I was born in the Congo,
Okay.
and so um, uh, Zaire at the time, so the DRC, the bigger one, and so there was this circumstance at post revolution where essentially by other powers what was going to happen to places like Cuba and the Congo was essentially decided from the outside. And there was a moment where the original leader of the revolution in the Congo, Patrice Lumumba, was in touch with some of these other characters that helped shape Cuba, such as Che Guevara and so on and so forth. But it just went another way. People got assassinated and so on and so forth. So our first conversation, we went there, and I was like, okay,
Oh wow.
I had sat in an office that was surrounded by his Court of the Dead art. So I was already like, okay, this guy.
Hey
But as soon
man.
as, there was respect. So as soon as I met him, I felt um, an instant kind of resonance where you already respect someone, you appreciate their energy. But the moment he sat down, you saw a kind of a profound nature and a classical sense of dignity and honor. And I'm like, this is a person that um, circumstances allowing, I think will be a lifelong friend, and he's been that since
Yeah.
then.
Yeah, honestly, it was one of the, I'm only up to 20 episodes, so it's, 20 different people so far. And then obviously even people who haven't been on here, getting to meet different people, no matter what they, bring to the table, in this field or on my side hobby. It's been amazing. I mean, but he was definitely one of the top ones, and it was almost like a campfire. Like we were just sitting there, me and my buddies, Casual and John. We were just like in awe, like just listening to the stories and the questions being answered, and like it was like every time there was something asked, it was like it was drawn to you visually to make sure you fully interpreted everything that was being said. It wasn't kind of like left up to the imagination. So I definitely appreciated that. But before we go any further, I do want to say hello to everyone out there in the chat. So Vane21, I appreciate you being here. Warren Dante, Aiden Martinez. See here, Warren Dante, appreciate you, man. Hugo, I appreciate you being here, man. Tone, what's up, man? Hey, he was very excited when the milk cart was on. He has a massive Court of the Dead collection, so it's pretty cool for him. Chase, what's going on, man? Archangel, appreciate you being here as well. Dominator, good to have you in the building, man. Rome Ross, man, appreciate you being here. Let's see who else is here. Casual Nerd Problems, what's up, man? Edwin Diaz. Let's see here. All right, Keesis, appreciate you. All right, and any other you guys who haven't chatted in the comments, I see about 20 of you guys on so far. Appreciate all of you guys being here. If you guys have any questions at any point in time, I can certainly highlight them for later and make sure they're asked. Greetings from the Netherlands. Wow, man, appreciate you being here. That's crazy. So going back to what you were talking about, do you feel like a person's imagination is defined based on their upbringing or their current circumstances, whether it's poetry or sculpting?
I wouldn't use the word define. What I would say and what I would speak to is source material. Think of it as the original hip hop sample, right? Like you can take it anywhere and you can mix it as far as your imagination can take you. That's you. But
Right.
the sample, has a kind of origin, and you can distort it to a point where it's not recognizable anymore.
Yeah.
But it's still your source material, and that's what I feel. It's important for artists to, I think, so you really can't help what you're exposed to because you're born somewhere and you see stuff, right?
Right.
At a certain point, when the lights turn on and you're going to become something, it's important to use your imagination to find fresh source material relative to you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if there's artists who all they know is superhero, mainstream superhero, that's all they've seen, that's all they keep feeding themselves that, and you can see where the work can be excellent in terms of you can see the force of their talent, but ultimately from a content perspective, it's always derivative. And then when somebody comes from just the outside and bends it a little bit, it's like, wow, right? Like you
Right.
guys talked about Frank Miller Batman. It's like, yeah, Batman. And then one day he's old, fat, and scarred, right? Like it's just a little
Yeah.
outside source material. Like people get hurt, people have scars, people age. People become disillusioned or jaded, or you know what I mean. And so just bringing that to a circumstance, it's almost obvious after the fact. But you're talking about this will be a veteran. If you're talking Batman, say he starts at 25, by the time he's 55, you're talking about a veteran of an ongoing 30-year war, right? And so to
Yeah.
me, it's the source material doesn't define you. Your soul, whatever it is in there, defines you. But the source material is always the origin of the recipe, or it's where you start, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no doubt, man. No doubt. Yeah.
What's up,
Milk Car
Amilcar?
says, "What's up, my friend?" Man, that's what's up.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's crazy because I was you kind of look back at more iconic people throughout history, and a lot of, like, even if you use like Michael Jackson for example, as an outside fan, a lot of people feel like everything was so precise, due to the harshness of his dad. I just wanted to make sure that the whole family was able to make it, and that's why I was asking that question, just to see, kind of like, where does that inspiration come from? Do you feel like from when you first started to where you are now, what inspires a individual piece has changed, or is it more work now?
Um, Gosh, there's so much there. I mean, that's like a philosophy of art, volume 10, and going. Um, Look, I think if you really want to get philosophical with it, that answer never ends. You can probe deeper and deeper and deeper. The
Hmm.
truth is, again, going back to the past, when I look at somebody like Michael Jackson, you go, okay, well, he's a musician and his dad, forced him to see certain things, but his music has a specific thing that I think is also featured in a lot of art. Um, so let me talk about Africa for a little bit because
Okay.
that's home. That's where I'm from. The African contribution to modern sort of pop music, right? A
Right.
lot of people think of the rhythms, obviously, right? But in
Right.
my opinion, the more profound contribution is improvisation, right? This is the thing that you see certainly in hip hop, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
both in its creative source material, but also the delivery, right? The performance. This is what
Hmm.
you see in dance, right? But you can roll it back
Right.
into blues and jazz and go all the way back to the root. So, when you talk about origin of art, you're like, look, you can go back to the womb. In the womb, what is the first sound you hear? Probably your mother's heartbeat, right?
Right.
So that rhythm is in us. The oscillation of sound, particularly in deep bass. Okay, so you want to go that far, fine. Like we all kind of share that. For me specifically, I I've been drawing since I was about 4,
Oh wow.
and I remember. So my dad's a mathematician, and he's kind of a math engineering kind of guy. So that's what I was around. Geometry, I saw a lot of that stuff. It just was there. I never thought
Hmm.
about it. And I used to ask him to draw stuff for me, and he would draw like a little stick bicycle guy, you know,
Right.
because I love bicycles watching because I was fascinated by how the speed didn't correlate with the rhythm of the pedals. It just seemed surreal. I started watch people go by on bikes. This was in Abidjan in Ivory Coast.
Hmm.
And at some point he was like, why don't you draw it yourself? And I was like, oh. And that's how I started. And I saw my brothers used to draw airplanes and things like that. So it was objects, technology. And I was in a science kind of household. So I always loved
Okay.
science. I always, science fiction and so on and so forth. But I was going to be a scientist. I loved space. I loved the space program. I saw Challenger blow up. It didn't scare me. That inspired me. I was like, these people had courage, and I think we could do that better. That's what I wanted to do as a kid. Um, and I honestly, I always drew just for fun. It was my, messing around thing. But I was always going to be science, biology, something, and I was good at science, good at math. And then I did sports, and sports was the first thing that I did that was more fun, entertainment,
Yeah.
a different kind of thing. You know, in 8th grade, I was like 6'1", so everybody thought, oh, okay, And one day somebody gave me a basketball. I had a little crossover. It was easy. You go, so I kept doing it.
Right.
Well, by the end of my sophomore year, I was 6'2", and everybody else was like, and I wasn't the fastest. I was athletic. I really tried. I worked hard, and I was like, okay. I remember I went out to a park and I played this kid who's like a year younger than me.
Hmm.
He's almost my height, and he really was. He wasn't trained. He was sloppy, what I mean? But I had to work hard to beat him, and he was close. And this was just his raw talent. And I was like, for the time that I've put in, for that guy to be that close,
Yeah.
I was like, this might not be for me. In the meantime, I didn't even bother taking art classes because I could draw better than everybody in art. I just didn't bother. Right? The art teacher kept trying to get me, to take art class. I'm like, so, and this was 1995. And one day, this dude just took me to a comic shop and was like, check this out, check this out. And I looked at it and I was like, my whole life, I thought comic books were infantile. And that was the first time I really looked. And I was like, okay, all these people can't draw backgrounds. They can't
Mm-hmm.
draw cars because I could do that. I just couldn't. I just never drew people, right? And but they were telling stories, and that's the first time that I was inspired to kind of go this direction. And I had to learn figure drawing and learn everything else. And then one day I was in the same comic shop, and the comic shop owner knew me at that point. He knew my taste, and he'd seen some of my art, and he was like, you know what? Look at this book right here. And it was like kind of like a nude woman thing, and I was like, no, come on, dude. And he's like, no, it was Ghost in the Shell. He was like,
Oh wow.
don't be deceived by the cover. It's not about that. It's. So on faith, when my first paychecks, I got a job, I bought it and I read it, and I was like, okay, now you're in my space. You're talking about spirituality, confronting science, confronting the concept of the soul and intelligence, along with what happens when our technology crosses over into our biology, and you're doing it
Right.
in a sci-fi graphic novel, action, shoot 'em up, mechs, the whole deal. And I was never the same. So
Oh man.
this is where all those influences, the geometry, the science, the math, the biology, even the basketball, and I also did martial arts at that time, all entered my art and created this kind of mix that has continued to grow. So um, it's different now because the skills are there. At the time you're young, you're just chasing skills.
Yeah.
And at some point you still pursue the skills, but now you can kind of do what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have clients and you have personal projects, you're paying bills. So it's a different thing. But I think I the further away I am from my natural inclination, I'm competent, but I don't think my work is all that interesting, if that makes sense.
Now speaking about interesting work, right? Because I had to dig deep in the crates, and there's a piece that I've heard that when this piece came out, the internet supposedly crashed,
Uh-oh. Which piece is
and
that?
this is a piece that you designed. Let me see if I can actually pull this up here. And shout out my guy Casual. He definitely has this here. Do you recall this piece here?
Oh, that. Yeah, I recall
You
that.
recall working on Thanos on Throne?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Um, that's one of the special ones for sure. Um,
Nice.
you know, this is something that Amilcar addressed. Is from time to time, it's better to have a new flavor, a new voice, and an outsider or something. All right.
Yeah.
I knew what Thanos is. I knew that. I didn't know. I never read one of the stories with him in it. Um, what happened was they were trying to do the project, and I had nothing to do with it. And what was going on was the character's so big, and his throne would have been massive and not something you could package. And it just had been going around for a long time. And I was in Dave's office, Dave Igo, whose name's come
Yeah.
up before, and I saw what they were doing, and I said, the problem is the chair, right?
Yeah.
The throne. And I was like, I can draw a better chair for you. That's essentially I can make. I think we can make that impressive without being massive. And I was describing how you could use the volumes and have plenty of holes and cutouts, but have something that is impressive for what it is, not for its size. I said, okay, show me. So I just did a sketch with a brush pen and came back with it, and it's like, okay, this is your project. And that's kind of how it
Nice.
started. And I then did my homework and research. This is how I work. If I don't know the character, then I'll go back and do the research. But really, it started with the throne. And you know, my argument with these pieces is that the comic books themselves, which I've done a little bit of comics, that's kind of my start in a way. Um, Comics are done on a deadline. They're done in a hurry. If you think about it, they're a bit like a freestyle rap.
Yeah.
It's not the lyrics that you sat down and crafted for months. It's in the moment. So there's a lot of repetition, there's a lot of familiar, there's a lot of sort of conventional phrasing. So Thanos' throne in the comic books has to be the most basic geometry because that's what you need for speed. And what you're the power you're conveying it in the shot, in the gesture. You're not conveying it in the substance and the detail because you don't have time, right? And a lot of it is left to the characters. And even in the characters, you know, they're using the most efficient lines. So you're talking about, obviously the basic anatomy, but this you know armor piece he has across his shoulder is a
Right.
prominent line that's also echoed in his brow, right? So
Right.
these are these core features that he has, and blue and yellow, two easy print colors, right? You have cyan, a little bit of red for your blue. You have your yellow, maybe a dab of red to give it a little orange, and that's it. So it's real simple and it's efficient. But now you have an opportunity to say, okay, somebody's going to spend 800,000, 1,200 on this, and you're going to stare at it for months. How much content can we give them? And this is where you go back and you go, okay, well, this guy's in space.
Mm-hmm.
There's an age to it. There's an ancient. There's a whole thing to it. So that's where I went back and spent time with it. The armor, repeats those rhythms many, many times. And the idea is it's follow your eye, allow your eye to follow those details throughout the armor. Um, some of these details on the throne was to be like a spaceship. So you think influences for me were like Sid Mead and Giger in
Okay.
particular, but also I had done a bunch of Ralph McQuarrie design work for Sideshow at the time, and I had basically done the breakdown and essentially the detail design for Sideshow's Voltron.
Oh wow.
So that's where they knew my competence, knew my capability, and I could do this tech kind of stuff. So all that is in there. And yeah, the throne was actually sculpted by Justice Joseph, who I think works in effects.
Yeah.
So he took my drawing, did a rough, he sent it to me, and I would paint over it. And we did like, I don't know, almost a dozen rounds of just back and forth, me changing proportions and kind of pushing it. And the original throne was much longer, but we
Uh-huh.
had to trim it and make it more upright to get it to package. Um, and those two armrests, first time ever saying this, but Enterprise, and they sell.
Man. It's
So
crazy just hearing their stories, man. It's crazy. This is one of the pieces that like everybody wants this piece, man. Hey, hey,
yeah,
appreciate the suggestion, the milk carb. Definitely, man. This is hey, I'm in awe again, man. Just listening again.
I
It's
don't even
crazy,
have one.
man. So I actually want to show these real quick here if I can. Let me see if I have these. Show these to you. Cause this is I was trying to get the actual pictures, but it's gonna be right next to it, so it should still work. Um, so this is my buddy Casual. So obviously it's a Silver Surfer, but in the corner you can see the Thanos
Yeah.
on throne there, and he this is one of his. He loves that piece. He loves that piece, and it's just looking at it. It's amazing, man. It's a
Yeah,
really amazing statue.
this is one
Great.
of those also, I mean, you're talking to me, but um, you know, the project took off once I got on it because the throne was solved. Now it was doable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this one was one of those mega, kind of projects. So there's a whole team involved, right? So before me, there was a few designers. I think Alex Pasenko was one who really contributed a lot to it. Um, so Will Harbottle sculpted the figure, Justice Joseph's the throne, and then the two were, married together. Once that thing was output, now you have, the whole development department of people, because with that much detail, there's a lot of cleanup to get to the right pieces to mold it and cast it and so on, and then the painting. Um, this was, I think Casey Love painted this one. So there's a lot of people, a lot of pieces, a lot of moving parts to really execute. And so, you know, I I find it, again, we're talking in context of like this is the design part of it. But I find it myself off-putting when one person talks about something as if they did it all. I am a
Yep.
component, and maybe I might have been central to the ethos of it, but you got to understand it doesn't exist without the team, right? And I think it's just important to shout that team out because it's a lot of people that work on particularly a piece like that, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No doubt, man. No doubt. And
yeah.
that's something that yeah. Let me see if I can bring that up. Milcar. See if I have that. Let's see here.
Oh, yeah, the back view is and you know what? Um, some of the detail was reduced, just so you know.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I guess it's been a while, so I'm allowed to say it. Those little things on the end, they were all skulls. And they were like, all right, that's too much. So they just turned into little round nubs. But
Oh, you
yeah.
mean these right here?
No, on
Uh.
the right on the side of the chair there, right there.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, those were
Okay.
all
Yeah.
like diminishing little skulls. Um, one of the notes was, it's just too much Giger. But yeah, a lot of
Wow.
details change, even the on the rest and the support, there was a lot more there. But the idea was everywhere you look, you should see um, a rhythmic thing. Again, going back to rhythm, but you
Yeah.
see the forms descend and transform into something else each time. And for me, rhythm is extremely important because again, it relates to that part of us that has to do with cycles and iterations, from heartbeats to daylight, moon, everything. We're creatures of rhythm, and so I always try to reflect that in my art.
Man, that's crazy, dude. That's crazy. Yeah, this is honestly is an amazing piece, and that's something I definitely appreciate about the both of you. From the perspective of it's more than one one person to obtain something like this. So I definitely appreciate you as well as Milcar making sure that everybody gets their just due when it is brought up. But again, an amazing piece. Do you ever like look back, no matter how much time has passed from a piece being completed, moving on to the next work, to where like you still remember all those details? Because the way you told the story, and even a meal card was like they're just there. It's like riding a bike, man.
um, Most of it, yeah. I think every once in a while, I'll sit down and talk with somebody that worked on something, and they'll tell me something like, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that." Or sometimes you have a ton of files. I'll be looking through files, and I'll see something, and I'm like, and I'll go in the folder. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I forgot that." So I remember a little bit more, but that piece stands out.
Hmm.
It was typically a designer doesn't get that much time on a project. My role at Sideshow in a way was unusual, and I never sculpted anything. I'm not a sculptor. I dabbled, I tried, I don't like it. It's not my thing. Um,
Yeah.
but usually a designer will do a concept and he gets handed off, and then the sculptors will figure out, change it, do whatever they do. In my case, there were things that were so specific and so complex that I would stay with it and guide the sculpting process, essentially functioning as an art director. So it was delegated to me, and I would actually art direct sometimes entire pieces or aspects of the piece to get it to, because not everybody does that type of design, that type of look. A lot of sculptors come from a figure drawing place.
Yeah.
So, guns, shields, swords, but you start getting into sci-fi hardware, a lot of them need more guidance in terms of getting it to um, that level of specificity. So this was one where I was on it for months. The same thing with Voltron. If you look at that thing, I drew multiple views of the inside, all the tech of the cats, and then how the cowling fits on top. And so that's, again, it's unusual work, so it stands out because, again, I'm staring at the same drawings for days and days and days, and then like,
Yeah.
you know,
Do you
looking at
ever
the
have
sculpts.
to do you ever have to come back to something, like, hey, I've done it for 7 hours a day. Let me, come back to it tomorrow just to, make sure I
Oh
can
yeah,
stay fresh.
oh yeah. I draw. Depends. If I really have something where I'm going to focus in and solve it, I draw with the most intensity that I can. I just stay on it, and there's a point where I'm either exhausted or I'm stuck. That's when I stop and I put it away. And if there's still time to work, I'll just work on something else related. But then I'll look at it, either if I'm on a deadline, I'll go walk around, eat or something. But if I have time, I'll shut it down and sleep and look at it the next day when I'm awake, when I wake up, because then I have fresh eyes. I've had dreams that, in my opinion, I think dreams are like, that's when we really do the processing. I remember I had a project at McFarland when I was there. It was like impossible. And I was stuck, man. I was really, really stuck. And then, well, everybody was stuck, actually. A lot of people worked on it, didn't really have a good solution. And then I got the flu. I got really sick, and I had some weird geometric dreams, which I've had only a few times, when I've had the flu, and one time I had malaria,
Hmm.
um, living in Liberia. And I've had this specific kind of like terrifying dream of like geometry crashing into me. Anyway, when I woke up though, I was like, I got it. And I jotted down the sketches. And I remember when I got better, I came to work, I showed my boss, I got all these sketches and I'm explaining it. And he's like, yeah, okay, just, I trust you, go do it. And I did it, and I showed him. He was like, oh, that's it. And so, we showed Todd and he loved it. And then he didn't. Anyway, but yeah, so sometimes me just end of the day, sleep, come back, look at it, and
Hmm.
fresh.
Cool, man. Cool. And speaking of Todd, looks like we have a comment here from Nathan. He says, "JP, what other companies have you worked with?"
Oh man. So in-house full-time employee, Sideshow and McFarlane are the ones where people recognize.
Okay.
I've worked as a web developer. I don't think that's relevant. Like Code Monkey and graphic design, all that kind of stuff. I did that because it was easy for me and it was fun. But I did a lot of freelancing over the years. So uh, I've worked for one company that does, like, I think, architecture and design, and they do commercials now. I've done storyboarding with them. They're called Design Made. Um, my first, I don't know, big gig was like DC Comics, so they hired me
Oh
to
wow.
pencil or something. It was my first convention. The first time I showed my stuff, I was 20. They're like, "Yeah, we'll hire you." I was like, "Oh, really?" They're like, "Yeah." I was like, "All right, well, that was easy." Turned out not to be so easy. But so I did. This was during Terry Dotson's Harley Quinn run. I actually did an issue of that was like supposed to come out if he ever was late, but he, I guess, was on time, so it didn't happen. And then I was supposed to do cover work for them, but I only did Robin, one cover. This was 2003. And then I had some conversations to do something. I don't know if I'm supposed to say it. But anyway, this was at Comic Con. I went there. So I was graduated college at this point. I'm 22. Editor takes me up to the lounge, and there's like the whole food thing platter, right?
Yeah.
And Mark Wade is sitting there getting down, man. And I'm like, it's like, hey man, how are you? I'm Mark. I'm like, okay, you know, yeah, you're the guy that wrote that thing. Yeah, I'm JP. You know, I should have said I'm nobody, but I think we knew. So I had a conversation, and I thought this was my next thing, and then a couple months later, I saw a press release that somebody else got the gig, and I was like, oh, it's like that. So I realized then I wasn't, even though I tried, I wasn't a good fit for like superhero mainstream kind of stuff. At least conventional projects. Um, I'm the type of artist that I think I could do like a prestige thing where it was
Yeah.
really, really fleshed out. But when you're starting out, you're not going to get the page rate that makes that possible, right? Like, and so if you're the type of for me, the type of person where a page is going to take me 2 or 3 days, the starting rate at that time was under 200. It's like you can't live, you can't pay anything
Yeah.
anywhere, right? So that's where I was like, all right, I got to do other things. Started illustrating. Um, so yeah, I've worked for a lot of different clients that just come at me with, you know, you want to draw this or paint that or whatever. I've done it as long as it pays, it works. Uh, but yeah, so Sideshow again was just a client, and then they
Okay.
wanted to do more. I was a little hesitant about it, and I was like, all right, what are you want to do? So then they flew me in a couple weeks. I did it, pitched the job to me. I was like, cool. Came back, um, did that for 5.5 years.
Nice. Nice. So it looks like another question is here from Edwin. What art style do you prefer? Science fiction, mech art?
So I think I understand the questions. So I'm gonna answer. I see two questions there, so I'm gonna try to answer both. Style wise, I love, Sid Mead was one of the first artists that really inspired me in this space. Sid Mead can paint. Sid Mead can draw. The artist whose art really echoed with me was Masamune Shirow. Again, Ghost in the Shell. Um, you know, when it came to American comics, I was I was pulling from it, but I was annoyed by a lot of it. But the one that got my attention was Mark Silvestri. I just felt like he treated the figures like few other people could. Um, Wills Portacio, he could render, use anatomy a certain kind of way. So I was like, all right, these guys, good. Um, you know, Style, I like line art. I respond to a drawing and line art. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Full paintings, I can do that. I've done that. It's not my natural style, I don't think. As far as like science fiction, yeah, that's my genre. Mechs, I like mechanical things. Actual mechs like Gundam, I don't care for it.
Yeah.
um, but I like Shiro's mechs. I like there's a lot of stuff like that I've liked. It really depends. So to me, style isn't really something that I look at or pursue. It's the content that interests me, the substance of the drawing that interests me. I've seen amazing like animation, Disney style animation drawings where the essence of it and the energy is beautiful, and I'm compelled. I love it, and I wish I could do it. Um, I've also seen like amazing detailed, let's say mech art that just turned me off. I don't know why. It just wasn't my thing. So style is, I think of it as how you execute something. And for me, I resonate with line art a lot. And, the content, probably science fiction, probably technological, probably more cyberpunk. And now you're in my kind of domain where I'm happy, if you will.
Yeah, no doubt, man. No doubt. That's crazy. You know, like I'm checking out some art and stuff, right? And
Yeah.
what's what's the biggest difference from, something like this versus something like this? Like obviously color, but like it's
um,
like two completely different styles from the
yeah,
eye, like
so that thing with the color thing, that was a wraparound cover for, I think at the time they were called GI Comics.
mm-hmm.
I don't know what they go by now, but it was a wraparound for a indie book called Intrepid.
Separate.
Yeah, so somewhere in the middle there was the front, and then the other side was the back, and the logo was overlapping that glowing kind of area.
Okay.
And it's kind of a indie superhero-ish book, and I just, I drew it like how you would pencil, and then I inked it with the, pen, whatever. A lot of rhythms are actually the same; they're just more straight lines. And then, scan color. It's pretty straightforward, like how most comics are done. But that's a commission project, so those aren't my characters.
Okay.
Um, I came up with a composition, but I had to get all of them in there. And the idea was, they're, I don't know. I'm not really good at those group team shots where everybody's piled up, but essentially they're moving out. The drawing with the girl on the mini bike, that's one of my characters. That was all done with a ballpoint pen on a illustration
Wow.
board.
Yeah.
There was no
Wow.
pencil or underdrawing. You just kind of do it. But it was completely improvised, completely um, playful. This is a character who, one of the reasons that I came up with this character is she's completely unlike me in every way, background, gender, everything. You know, and so to me, this is a fun character to just express and create and feel things that aren't part of my life at all. I'm just a science fiction character, so it's on this little bike goofing off, the gear. So it was completely improvised. I once, I mean, this story exists. I've written it. I once drew it, but I never came around to really finishing it. But this is like one of those moments in the story that's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of fun.
Man.
So what's the difference? The state of mind, the nature of it. One's for money and one's for fun. Um, you know, Again, ballpoint was something I did for a long time. I drew with pencil forever, and I
Mm-hmm.
got stuck after a while. And ballpoint was one way for me to break out of those patterns, if you will. So yeah, those are all out of my sketchbook, probably, I don't know, 15 years ago.
This is crazy, man. Like if I take a pen or a pencil, you you don't even know what you're gonna get. I can't draw like to save my life, man. I can't draw.
Yeah, you know
This is
what it is
amazing,
though?
man.
It's like um the ballpoint pen for me is something that was always there, as a writing instrument my whole life. And so once I started to draw with it, I was like, I already know what this feels like. I know how this behaves. Like, how far can I take it?
Yeah.
And there's people who are doing far more refined ballpoint pen art. But for me, it's like comics and a little further, right? A little thinner, a
Yeah.
little tighter lines, but not quite perfectly smooth. I still enjoy like the hatching. Silvestri again really inspired me with how he treated like line work and hatching. And then later on, I learned, you know, Bernie Wrightson being one of those influences. And then all the way back before that, you had Gustave Doré, and so, when I look at all those guys and kind of that lineage, you see different ways to treat line against form to create smooth or texture or hair, things like that. And so it's a language that I explored for a while. I don't do that much of it anymore. That was actually
Mm-hmm.
Spawn concept art from McFarlane days.
Nice.
Yeah, that was supposed to be a piece. Um, Man, it just didn't happen. But yeah, we're trying to explore mech Spawn type stuff.
Okay.
And I did a
Man,
lot of Spawn concepts. I was
is that one of your favorite characters or?
You know what? No, but that was one of the characters that got me interested in comics. Spawn 33. I remember one of those first, like I told you when I went to the shop, somebody gave it to me. I looked at it and I was like, I would never read this. This is not my content. But the figures were so powerful and the colors were like eye popping. And I was like, this is amazing. Right. And the more I read it and looked at it, I could see things in the background where it's like this person's focus is clearly figure drawing. Everything else is, but that really inspired me, and so I started looking at all the different comics that I could at the time, and I remember really being inspired by. This was before Joe Madureira got really big, but it was like during his X-Men run. I looked at that and I was like, that's interesting. And then I think Carlos Pacheco is his name. He
Mm-hmm.
had like a little moment there where he was doing a similar kind of style, but he had more of an angularity and attention to his art. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I would never draw that way, but I was like, that's really, really kind of interesting stuff. And so all that, um, I would learn a lot from how people treated lines without ever taking their actual forms and stuff.
Man, yeah, that's crazy. Is there any few characters that you do like drawing, or is it almost better to just create one?
Um, I come from two angles, and this is probably a career challenge, but I don't really have that many characters that I'm like a fan of, and I've made the mistake sometimes at work by saying I'm not a fan, and people think I don't want to work on it.
Mm-hmm.
What it is I respond to a problem to be solved. Problem solving really inspires me. So, you know, Todd would present these ideas that he had that some of them were like, well, that can't be done as a toy. So then my boss would be like, all right, JP, go try to figure it out. And now I'm like, okay, I'm going to attack. So suddenly, like those Spawn met, it wasn't about Spawn. It was about, how can I take these lines and forms, like the essence of this character? There's a few key things that are Spawn, the M logo on his thing. And then how do I make that a mech? How do I make that a cowboy? Or, there's a cowboy mech she Spawn that I did. So you had three different things layered on top of that. So to me, the problem solving is inspiring. If I'm just gonna draw characters, usually they're my own. Um, you know, Even like Shiro, who's probably my favorite artist, like I don't draw his characters for fun. It just doesn't occur to me. Um, I'm trying to think of other stuff that I really like. This right here is Hal Foster's Prince Valiant.
Yeah.
Love that stuff. I've never tried to draw it. It just, you know, um, it inspires me, but it's not. A lot of people learn to draw by copying. It never occurred to me to copy because not on purpose. I just assume that the drawing is already done. Why am I gonna, right? So I would look at stuff and be like, it's interesting how they did that.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna draw my thing using their method and see if it works. That's kind of how I would learn and evolve. And so I never really developed the habit of copying or doing something like that. So, but like the characters that I love, yeah, there's a lot of them. I mean, and I also think sometimes it's more about how a character is treated. Like I knew what Iron Man was. I never paid attention. The
Hmm.
first Iron Man I paid attention to was Will Protasio's Heroes Are Born. That to me was the first time I saw an actual mechanized Iron Man, where you saw the parts and the tech and the wires, and he did that before Adi Granoff got to it, right? Adi Granoff treats surfaces beautifully, um, you know, and so when Adi Granoff came back and did it, I was like, now there's something interesting, because now he's treating it like an actual vehicle that is worn, and then which inspired like the movie kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I would have never paid attention to that character. I just it was one of the Marvel kind of things. Spider-Man is classically cool. He's a great character. I don't. It's not my thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I see a great Joe Quesada had a piece where he's like climbing on the wall. You kind of see the fingers. Like that's an interesting way that so that piece is inspiring. Todd's kind of classic cover with all the webbing is interesting, but it's more what those guys did with the character. So I've done commissions for people of different characters that they like. They send it to me. It's like it makes sense. I'll take it. But it's always like if there's a challenge to it, it's interesting. Like
Yeah.
I have to have some kind of. I did covers for Aspen Comics. I forgot to mention that. Um,
Okay.
2018, 2019, I don't remember. So that was fun. Um, Michael Turner was an artist that really inspired me. I'm not, um, and I think of all the comics artists that were of that time, whatever, he was kind of an outsider in his method. And you look at his designs, he had that same rhythm, sensibility to his design, his layouts, his pages. And so, I was always a fan. And obviously, I met him in 2000. He was really nice to me. And I was in Savannah at the time. It was the same convention where DC hired me. I showed my stuff to Top Cow. I didn't really draw Top Cow stuff. And it was really funny because everybody was showing their stuff and you get in line. And it was Matt Hawkins, and he was like holding one of those little uh, DVD player things that you could hold in your hand. It was like they were like new at the time, and he was like distracted. He was like, "Yeah." But if you were good, like my stuff was good enough, and he actually looked at it, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So he's not just like. And he was like, he looked at it and like put his thing to the side. He's like, talk to Joe Benitez, and Michael Turner were sitting there. I was like, all right, cool. So I showed Joe my stuff, and he's like, give me some pointers. Really, he was like, you can draw whatever you want, but I'm gonna tell you what the Top Cow style is. So he's like,
Yeah.
women are this way. That's essentially all he said. And so Michael Turner was there signing, and he stopped, and he got up, and he came over and looked at my stuff, and he looked at me, and he's like, "That's awesome." I mean, talked to me a little bit. Like he stopped his signing, so I always remembered that. And so obviously he died too young, but he was brilliant. So I met the Aspen folks at Comic Con, did a couple sideshow statues of their characters. Loved doing that, and then did the covers to kind of like um, really explore their kind of universe and cross promote. But that was the joy of just working with his company. I did variant covers for one series, and then I did two Soulfire covers. That I love doing. I may work with them in the future again. It's kind of up to them, but
Yeah.
I'd never drawn those characters before. Even though I loved them, I just never drew them. You know?
So are commissions currently on the table?
Uh, yeah. If if you're not in a hurry, um, yeah, I take him on from time to time. I mean, people can put my email up there. I don't know how you want to do it, but yeah, people email me all the time. I mean, I explore it. I love the challenge. If something doesn't make sense for me, like, you know, I typically will say no, or look, can we do it a different way or whatever. Obviously, it has to be worth the effort. Like, I'm not one of those guys that can do a 10-minute drawing. Like, it's just not. You know what I mean? Like, that's when I sit down and sharpen my pencil. Like, I'm not even. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so if it's something that makes sense for me to sit down for a couple hours or a day, like, yeah, sure. Um,
cool, man. Yeah, what's your email, and I'll put it up here.
do you want me to say it or type it, or
Yeah, yeah, you could type it in. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
where
so
do I type it?
uh
Oh, the private? Yeah. Okay.
yeah, that's fine.
Got it.
Aiden says, I love Benitez, one of my favorites. Michael Turner is my all-time favorite though. Then he says, I own all the Aspen slash Soulfire comics, variants and all.
See, he has good taste. Oh, so something I forgot to say. Again, I don't remember everything, but yo, Joe Benitez's Weapon Zero. I was, at that time, I'm looking at comics. I'm like, yeah, 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 yeah. And then all of a sudden, I remember picking up Weapon Zero, and like he had a lot of the Shiro influences on it, but like that was one comic that really I felt was special out of all the stuff that was going on at the time. And Joe Benitez went on to do, I think, did some Darkness, did some Magdalena, and then some of his own stuff. And he's a guy I actually know, talk at convention, text a little bit. But he's an artist that I think. So if you look at the image people, right?
Mm-hmm.
They had their studio. So Todd's business and design, but he wasn't the best artist. So all the artists he hired were fully formed and had their own styles. The studios where people grew up were Wildstorm and Top Cow, who were actually together as homage studios. Um, Liefeld's crew, he wasn't the highest level draftsman in the first place. So it was like there was a ceiling there. And I think those guys went on to grow and do brilliant things. But you look at Jim Lee's guys, and you've got, again, they were all in one house. They kind of separated, but you had Travis Charest, J. Scott Campbell, Ryan Benjamin, um, later on Lee Bermejo, like incredible guys who came up under Jim Lee, right? And each of
Oh
them
wow, I
found
didn't
their
know that.
distinct voices. There's a bunch of them. I mean, I left,
Scott Campbell,
you know.
Bermejo under Jim Lee. That's crazy.
Oh yeah. So G. Scott Campbell came in at, I think he was 19, roughly 93. I think Travis Trey is a little bit older, but came in 93, 94. Travis had done some stuff for DC, I think, before he got there. But anyway, like you saw how, like, if you go back and look, there's a moment where you think Campbell had his own kind of animated touch to it, but you went through a kind of Jim Lee filter and he found his own voice. Travis Charest went through more of what people were calling a Jim Lee filter, but I think it was more the finish. But again, found his own voice. But you look at the Top Cow guys, and you have guys who were all doing Silvestri type stuff. There was a point where it's hard to tell who was doing who unless you really had a good eye.
Mm-hmm.
But David Finch, Joe Benitez, Michael Turner, I think Billy Tan, I don't know what happened to him, but Brandon Peterson was there for a while. There was a whole group of guys there, and there was a lot of overlap in how they look because they would fill in on each other's books and stuff. But
Yeah.
to
Damn.
me, when you look at how guys came up in those studios under, say, Mark, and then found their own voices, like
Mm-hmm.
you can see Michael Turner influences in Mark's work. This is the pupil influencing the master, and I love this kind of studying these guys' work as they evolve. You know, um, I looked up to those guys. I was a little bit younger. I think the industry collapsed before too many other people got in. But I would have loved to have kind of gone through that same process. That was kind of my aspiration. But by the time I was ready, you're talking um, 2000, 2001. I mean, it was really like everything was kind of spreading out. And but I still look to those guys for inspiration. So Yeah.
That's cool, man. Cause like for us in the hobby, when there's certain names that are mentioned, it almost always gives you like, you know what, I'm gonna at least check it out. You know what I mean? May not want to buy a piece of art, framed art, or a comic or a statue, but I'm gonna at least check it out because I hear Libra Mayo. I
Yeah,
hear.
yeah.
I mean, for me, I like Alex Ross. I like Jim Lee, Felipe Mascara, Richard Long. Love him. Uh, uh, Jason, I like his work too. There's a lot of artists out there, too many to name. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
great people out there. Are there any sculptors that you prefer to have your work to make sure the final product is done correctly?
You know, it's designing for sculpture is something that just happened. It wasn't a decision that I made. Like I'm gonna pursue this. It's just that my art lent itself to 3D because I would spend so much time thinking of form. I always think of form. I'm not a flat kind of, you know what I mean? I love guys that can do animated looking stuff where a character's face is different from every angle, based on expression.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, at McFarlane, it was just like it was just a studio. Like you didn't really choose; it just kind of happened. Like there was a
Yeah.
process of some people did shoes, some people did this, some people did that, some people did the guns, and it all came together because it was articulated stuff. A lot of it. At Sideshow, I didn't really know anybody, so it just kind of was whoever you know um, it happened with. Um, my favorite results, I'll name several. So
Okay.
Mark Newman, uh, he's just a special artist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I worked with him on Soulfire Grace, and I think it was his first all digital piece, by the way. Phenomenal. So with him, you don't have to do anything when it comes to the human figure. He'll nail it. Like whatever pose you draw, he'll nail it. It's gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be graceful. And for somebody who is so experienced, so senior, so high level, I was really touched by how much effort he made to get what I was designing right. We were trying to capture the language of Michael Turner's art and design. So I did a design for Grace based on a compilation of Turner's work, kind of distilling, chord rhythms and lines and tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
But Mark had never done that or seen that stuff, I think, and so he was relying on me to guide him through all this stuff. And he really, oh, I think that's my phone. Sorry.
Oh, you're all good.
Um, let me.
All these artists.
Can I pause for 1 second?
Yep. All good, man. No
Yeah.
worries.
All right. Hold on.
Jason says, "Yeah, man. All these artists are killing it today." Yeah, if you guys have any questions, certainly go ahead and put them in the comment section, and I'll make sure that JP gets some answered. Again, I'm always mesmerized by being able to hear these stories and stuff, and it's almost like I said, a kid at a campfire, man. Just listen to somebody give some really good, interesting information. Um, Edwin says, "Yeah, I love Pitt. Still have two first copies: Pitt versus Hawk, the Moore statue, and the Pitt BAF." That's what's up, man. So, Edwin, do you have any? Do you have CGCs as well, or do you just have like any like slabs, anything like that? Um, what up from Detroit? What's good, J Rob? Oh yeah, that was Brandon Peterson's creator-owned book, I think. At Aiden. Oh,
Oh,
Arcanum was another run I loved. Yeah, no doubt, man.
okay. I'm back.
No problem.
Yeah. So I was saying Mark Newman, again, really special. But he was a freelancer. So again, he was he's one of the more high level, I think, senior, really amazing artists out there. And working with him was an honor. And I was touched by how much effort he put to reach out and to make sure that he nailed it. Um, there's Steve Schumacher who sculpted Shira. So me and him collaborated on that piece. Shoe stuff is always soulful. All he has the touch. I'm telling you, he does a lot of the J. Scott Campbell statues.
Hmm.
So any chance I have to work with him, I'll do it. We did the Addy Granoff Iron Man as well. So he worked with Addy Granoff on most all of it, and I just helped with some of the hardware details and stuff. And so again, any chance to work with him, it was great. Lionel, we worked on together.
Yeah.
Um, so the pieces that stand out the most that people would know is with Will Harbottle. Um, so he did Voltron, and that was a long
Voltron.
collaboration on Sideshow's
Okay.
Voltron. And he did Thanos on Throne, but more so the figure.
Hmm.
So those are my two main collaborations with him. Um, and Dan Ulrich, who gosh, I love his work. Dan Ulrich did Aspen, the Fathom, the Aspen character, and he also did the Bounty Hunter, the one you have on screen there, the girl, bottom right, I think. Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
Dan Ulrich he's I think he was a Weta guy for a while, but he's one of those people that just has the touch. And the gun, was my design, and the suit design kind of existed. I revised it, but the boots and the backpack and the helmet, like all that was my, the shoulder pads. But he just nails it. The kind of like, because I like to do hard surface stuff that still flows, and he
Yeah.
captures it perfectly. He gets it. So, um, he's again another favorite to work with. There's a lot of guys that are really, really just good. And again, I don't have a particular, I wasn't like a fan of anybody. I didn't know anything, right? I just
Yeah.
was like, well, these are the guys that's signed to the project, right? Like, okay, cool. um, so my goal right now, though, um, is to work with Amilcar,
You know what's
and I'm
crazy?
not
I
gonna
was
say
actually just
anything
looking
else.
at that for the for the Motu because I seen Motu, so I'm like, did he work on this one? But I didn't see his name, so I was like, I was
Yeah,
just
for the stuff
hoping.
he's not so much a tweeter head. We've been talking about doing something on our own. So
Yeah.
that's when it happens, it happens.
Yeah.
The Black Panther there
Hmm.
was done by Raphael Phillips. Um, I don't know how much time you have, but that's something that's
Oh,
worth
you're good.
talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, this was my last sideshow project,
Oh wow.
and
I love the stance on this. The stance on this is it's on par, man.
uh, Raphael's a special artist. He comes from effects. I actually met him in college. He was a friend of a friend of a friend,
Oh
and
wow.
I met him one time at a party, and then he came over a couple times. I knew him, respect, I knew who he was. We just didn't. We had different schedules, different whatever, so we never really like hung out in college, but we knew each other much respect. And then I saw him at Comic Con 12, 15 years later, I don't know, something like that. And instant connection. And we talked. And eventually he wanted to do collectibles, so we got into it. But this piece, I'm going to tell you something. This comes full circle. When I first visited Sideshow in 2014, I just came in as a freelancer. I was a guest artist in the studio for a couple weeks. So my evening was mine. And I had some friends. I went to a club. A friend invited me downtown LA. And I met Chad. This was right before James Brown came out. get on up. And a mutual friend, his name is Logan Coles. He's a film producer. He was Chad's writing partner, and introduced me to a bunch of people. Which Logan's an outgoing guy, gregarious. He's always introducing me to all kinds of people. Um, but Chad was there, unassuming, quiet, guy. Met him, shook his hand, and he had the air of an artist. And I was like, yeah, I was more comfortable with his energy because he wasn't like loud, like a lot of people. But I didn't know who he was until like 2 weeks later. I saw the Get On Up trailer, and I asked my friend, I was like, "Is that?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm looking at this force of a personality coming out of like, no, but that was the quiet dude who was like,
Quiet dude.
just, you know. And that's when I knew. And this was before Black Panther or whatever. And so I got to meet him a couple times since then. We would kind of get together. This it was like a circle of us who, you're in LA. Not everybody gets to go home for the holidays. So, a bunch of us would kind of come together and hey, family. It was like your local family. And so that's where, I got to interact with him a few more times, and he just was very curious. And I remember one time, I think it was a birthday thing, he's asking me a little bit more about, where I'm from, and he's asking questions about Africa and this, that, and the other. And then, I don't know why. I'm like, oh, but people are curious, right? One black man to another.
Mm-hmm.
And a while later, I saw the announcement, you know, Black Panther, and I was like, oh, um, you know, and obviously the movie had tremendous cultural impact. For me, I again, I told you I was born in the Congo. My life started in Africa. English is actually my second language. I spoke French up until I was like 7 years old, 7 8 years old, and
Nice.
so I always had this kind of multicultural perspective. But I'm from there, and I knew that, and America was foreign to me. So I told you, I played basketball, so I'm out here hooping with these people, in the hood, but these people make no sense to me. We're all black, but I don't understand them. Like, I don't understand their attitude, their behavior. I don't understand the culture. There was an edge, there was an anger that, like, I just didn't know have that, you know. Where I came from in my family, my dad had been an intellectual who had studied in Europe. He was invited to study in Europe. So wherever I had gone as a kid, my dad was either one of the equals or he was above everybody else because he was a PhD. He studied at Louvain in Belgium and the University of Paris. So he was high level intellectual. He was invited by the State Department to teach at Princeton before I was born. That's my vision of a black man, right?
Yeah.
And I'm around all these people who are having a really hard time, and generationally are having the hard time has been passed on. You know, am I running with police and stuff like that? I didn't really get in trouble, but I remember being harassed at different times, and I'm thinking, okay, clearly it's a misunderstanding. It's not race, right? Um, but the more time I spent here, the more I see this tension, and I see it's got a deep history. And so, for all that I knew and the friends that I had, that movie um, gave me a perspective because I have a brother who grew up here like an African American, right? And so I'm looking at this movie and I'm seeing, I understand T'Challa, and Killmonger helped me understand not just my own brother, but all the brothers here. And it just really like it hit me because I've had those experiences. I just never contextualized them in a certain way. And so that movie was, I think, and for a lot of people to see Africa as the center of something is big. The first movie that really did that, in my opinion, was District 9, at least in the sci-fi space, was like
Yeah. Yeah.
aliens didn't come to London or LA or New York, Johannesburg,
Yeah.
right? And so there's a lot of stories in this piece. And so when they came to me, it was like one of those projects had been ongoing, but nobody had solved it. And they asked me, "Hey, take a pass." I did a couple sketches, and then finally I drew that pose, and I was
Mm.
like, "That's the attitude." And so we worked on it, and they asked me, what artists you want to work with, and I had worked with a bunch of guys, but at that point, it was like, okay, they were open to stuff, and so I proposed Raphael, who had already worked in effects, who had done some Marvel stuff, and
Yep.
he's another, again, brother, but he's from here. In fact, we both spent a lot of time in Virginia and just never met each other. And he did a great job. He's a great artist that he can do figures, he can do hard surface, he can do tech, he can do organic. Um, but I knew he would capture the soul and the gesture of it. And midway through the project, Chad passed away from, cancer. And the day that I found out, we were working on his portrait. So I had been looking at this face
Man,
and reference all throughout the day of somebody that I thought, hey, when this is done, it'll be great to show him, like, hey,
you can
you
show him.
know.
Yeah.
And probably 5 years before, my friend had joked about this. He was like, because we were talking, and he was like, hey, that dude's gonna be designing your action figure, right? And we had a laugh, and I was like, maybe, maybe not. We'll see. Um, so this piece turned into something else, and you know, we had the option of doing either suit, but I felt the original appearance was probably going to be more iconic and in some
Yep.
ways better to execute. Um, but we didn't know going into it that what it would be now, and so I just this is one of those times where the work is really personal. It's not just
Yeah.
commercial. You know what I mean? This is somebody that I knew. This is somebody whose art, speaking of art, left a mark on the global culture that is profound. If you think about how Black people in Africa has been represented for 500 years, to have a collaboration of art like Black Panther that just shows a different vision and a different narrative, you know, the idea that like a world power and maybe the world power can come from Africa. This is the origin of human, as science tells us, and probably the origin of civilization and language. This is the root. This is the womb. This is where the original rhythm comes from. And so this piece of art is special, and I hope that people, I hope this one stays with people, if that makes sense, because there's a lot of love and a lot of work and a lot of relationships put into this. The sculptor Raphael, you know, I, I would let him get into it, but he was
Yeah.
touched by this very same cancer and the loss of his family, while I think contributing to the movie. And so the statue was a revisiting of all these things. So this is where art can really go deep. And so I didn't grow up putting a lot of thought about my color, skin color, because where I started, everybody was Black, and therefore what was unusual was being white or something else, right? Um, if you think about it, part of this um, issue of race is when the distinction becomes a problem, an issue, or whatever, right? There are people who are other and people who are not other. Today, in America in particular, because everyone's an import, you have white and Black and so on and so forth. But like, I remember just being a human being and other people were white. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you come here and people are telling me you're black, you're black, you're black, you're black. Well, okay, I'm probably some kind of brown, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but it's like, why are you othering me? I'm human, you know? Um, at the same time, we all come from different places. We have so much richness to bring. This movie, I felt they did a great job of celebrating Africa in a popular action adventure movie. Okay, they they
Yeah.
they really brought in colors and design and so on and masks and this kind of compilation of you know. But I always tell people genetically, there's more genetic variations on the continent of Africa than the whole rest of the world combined. There are more languages spoken in Africa than the rest of the world combined. There are more distinct cultures and ethnicities in Africa. You know what I'm saying? So there's so
Yeah.
much culture
Yeah.
there. You can be somewhere and hear a language and a style, and you walk, go 20 miles, and there's a new place, new language, new culture, new food, new attitude. There might be some interaction trade wise, but they're distinct ethnicities. It's amazing and it's beautiful. So, and you'll see new art, new
Yep.
sculpture, new, and it just goes on and on and on that way. And again, it's a digression, but I just wanted to really like shout this piece out as.
No, it's amazing, and honestly, from the how the community perceived it was, for one, we were all like very surprised, like, oh wow, there's a Black Panther that's coming out. Most people love the stoic pose, and the fact that even the arms are very long, like how his was in the film, or I guess his actual body, but you know what I mean.
He has long
Um,
arms.
yeah, and people love it, and you had mentioned the suit, and from what I've heard, the general feedback has been this was the suit that they're glad was made opposed to the other suit. So I think so far a lot of people love it, even the people who are just comic collectors, like comic from the comics, not like a movie collector. They're gonna still pick up this piece because even how it's portrayed when you have the portrait of the cat on, of the panther rather. So like it's an amazing piece of work. So props to you and everyone involved in this. Definitely, as you said, a personal. It became more personal towards the ending. So crazy.
Yeah, it's probably the most important piece that I feel I've worked on. I think the other ones were um I didn't I did a few drawings for this
Hmm.
and then really was the art director on it and stayed through it. Um the other pieces I have like maybe 10 times more drawings and more detailed drawings. But this one is, yeah, it's
If you could tell me about Deja Thoris. This was an interesting piece when it came out.
um I'm credited on it, but what you're looking at has very little to do with me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was assigned to it. I did a bunch of concepts and poses. I think I did some reclined ones, but the final design went to someone else. Will
Okay.
Harbottle sculpted it. It's a good piece. I just I'm glad that there's a lot of pieces that I'm credited on that I just did aspects of it.
Okay.
That one I'd have to look in my designs. I don't remember. I don't know how much even showed up.
Do
um,
Aiden, you're funny. um, on, on the Mister Freeze and Boba Fett. Well, hold on.
yeah.
Okay, I'll get to Boba Fett in a minute. On the Mister Freeze, um, that's a piece that I'm thinking of picking up, but I've been looking at it for a long time. I think I'm finally gonna pull the trigger. I have some reward points,
Yeah.
with Sideshow. So I think I'll finally, hey, give myself a birthday present or something. I don't know, but what did you contribute on this piece here?
Um, I think. quite a bit. Now, this was one of those where there was a couple designers. I think Ian McDonald's, Alex Pasenko. The original design, though, had a motif of three. If you look at the, we compiled a couple of designs, but the cartoon one, we had like the three, there were segments of three throughout his costume. So those pipes
Hmm.
were originally three, 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 shoulder, and you can see that where I'm not sure why, but at the waist they turned it into three pipes and four pipes, and then four pipes at the
Oh,
shoulder, but the three at the wrist stayed, three on the gun stayed. I think it's
yeah,
four on the feet, but originally it had this motif of threes throughout, and
yeah.
so um, the basic hardware design, like having the pipes kind of flowing all over the figure, that was my design. The gun, I did a whole series of guns. Originally had a pistol and a big gun. Um, but the idea of like this freezing stuff coming through, that was me. And then
Yeah.
I actually had designed, when it came to me, I actually went home that day and did a sketch of that backpack based on the actual mechanics of a refrigerator.
Oh,
And
wow.
so that's where that came from, and I brought it in, and then we developed it, and the sculptor and some of the other stuff, they kind of take it a little bit different direction, but originally that pack was a little bigger, a little different, but the grill element was like, if you look in the fridge, and then there was originally copper piping running through that. So that was one thing that changed, was I had copper piping going through it. Like if you look in the fridge, you'll see like one copper pipe, and the idea was it would echo kind of like the red glasses, and you have like little touches of copper throughout his. So it's a little bit different, but yeah, I worked on pose. So it was a collaboration though. And Ian McDonald was another designer. I'm not sure who else, but yeah,
Yeah,
a
Ian
lot of these.
McDonald. Yep.
Yeah, a lot of these are collaborations, and so you get
Yeah.
you get you know sometimes it's 100% me. Sometimes I'm just like 50% or 80%. But yeah, and the site's
Nice.
pulling up certain pieces, but there's a lot that I guess are no longer available, so that's why they're not there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah,
um,
exactly. Like, for example, it doesn't pull up Thanos since it's no longer available. I mean, it's crazy the amount of work, and somebody new. I've only been in this hobby for a little over a year. And one of the first pieces that I looked at back then was that Mr. Freeze. It was one of the first ones that I had saw. Um, and it's crazy because like at that time, this is before being on YouTube and involved in the collecting community. I had no clue. I'm thinking it's just just a manufacturing company who just did a Mr. Freeze. No clue about people such as yourself, such as Emil Carr, such as Ian McDonald, Richard Long. Like I'm thinking it's no different than not to slight anything else, but no different than a toy you'd get at Walmart. Like not the intricate details and time, and dedication that it actually takes to produce something, something as complex and sophisticated as some of these can be. Um,
uh,
it's crazy, and I applaud people such as yourself for just the time that it takes and the approach you guys have to take to be disciplined enough to start with a blank canvas and have a design to take. That's it's crazy.
it's it's really, it goes deeper once you enter the organization, and this is where every company has their circumstances and their culture, and they're not perfect.
Hmm.
The one thing I'll say about Sideshow is there are some great people there, really great people. And so when I started working there, after a while, first, I do the design and I give it to them. That's how it started. After a while, when you're in, you see what happened, and you ask people, you know, why something went one way or the other, or what happens at, throughout the process, and you learn. So after a while, you start designing to achieve what's possible, if that makes sense. In other words,
Yeah.
instead of the pencil being my tool, the entire operation becomes my tool because I understand what cut and sew is going to do, what mold and cast can do, what the 3D guys can do. And now I'm designing to make use of the resources we have, right? Like on, I think it was Shira, a specific design was made with the understanding that the graphic design people can vectorize it and get it printed onto that cape. It's things like that you start kind of doing that are really interesting. And so, like, the final art, the people who get the most credit are going to be the sculptors, because the surfaces that you see, that was their eye and their hand,
Yeah.
right? They're the um but the cape, all the sewing goes through, his name is Tim Hansen.
Okay.
you know he's he's a big guy, looks like a Viking, man, but he's a wonderful human being, truly, the type of soul that the world does not have enough of, and I mean that genuinely as a human being. But he figures out the cut and sew and the patterns and everything else, and he just makes it happen. And so sometimes, you want to do something, but I'm like, will this work? So you go down, you talk to Tim and say, hey, look, this is what I'm trying to do, and he'll guide me, right?
Yeah.
Or I can go to the project managers. Anthony Mestis was the one on Black Panther. There's a couple of them, really good guys who can tell you, okay, look, if you do this type of detail, here's what happens. Or if you have this type of structure, we're gonna have to run a rod through it. This is where cost is gonna go. Like, do we want to do that? Um, so yeah, it's the entire machine it's an instrument. It's much more like an orchestra with a couple of solos than an artist like doing their thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt, man. No doubt. Um, that's crazy. A question, and any questions that you guys have, please feel free to ask. A question that I actually have for you is, we'll just use the She-Ra for example. Let's say the project is starting January 1st, 2022. Is there a typical time frame before it's even brought to the public, if you can answer that? Or does it kind of vary on what's being
It
worked on?
it varies a little bit, so I'm gonna say about a year, give or take, for prototype, about a year before you get it enhanced, something like that. So, you know, if there's fewer people involved and everything is clear, then from sculpt to prototype can be 6 months, sometimes less, I think,
Mm-hmm.
right? It just, how long does a sculptor take to do it? Output, clean up. You can cast it up. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, at that
Yeah.
point, it's like, how much time does it take for you to print it and clean it up and then make that kind of stuff, right? Um, if it's something like Thanos where there's a lot of parts, when that thing was spread out, like, there was a lot of parts, and so you had to document. It was like a team of people, I think like 4 or 5 of them, that just cleaned up all those parts for like, I don't know how long. Um, but once it's all done, you got your copies, you have your prototype that you've maybe photographed and started to sell. They usually make 2 copies at least, fully painted, right? One stays
Yeah.
here, one goes to China. Now, at that point, they've already sent, different unpainted samples to China for them to make their molds out of, right? But then
Right.
the copy goes to China and they paint it up and finish it and send it back, and you compare it to the other one. How close did they get it? So you give them notes so they can adjust their processes. And I think once they're within a certain percentage, Then okay, good to go.
Mm.
Then you run. How long does it take the factory to make them, box them, put them on a boat that's going to sail for 2, 3 weeks or whatever? It gets on a truck that then comes to the warehouse and then shipping. So, you know, I would say roughly year to prototype, year to shipping, but either one of those could compress based on a lot of different circumstances. Sometimes you wait for a moment to reveal like a Comic Con, you know. Black Panther, I didn't know when it was coming out. It just kind of came out, but like Voltron, I remember was first shown unpainted at Comic Con. I think 2015, 2016, something like that. So that was like a big deal. People saw it unpainted, like wow. So, so it really depends, but I would say something like that, a year and then another year.
Okay. And how are the cons for somebody like yourself? Is it do you get the same, I guess you could say, joy as a regular civilian just walking in there as a nerd, so to say?
Um, I am. I think I'm. So yeah, in certain ways. So when I've worked on a bunch of pieces, and then when they would do the whole sideshow pavilion, I would go to the convention. It was always shocking because I didn't know how many things were being done, and sometimes I hadn't seen the final version of a piece that I worked on. So it is exciting, but I know a lot of it, so it's not all new. It's not, you know what I'm saying? But the type of wow is different, but it's still wow. Once the con really starts, you would stay away from the booth because it was so crowded. I didn't really want to be there.
Yeah.
Um, Unless I have something that they want me to do, like in person or do something, then I would, show up and do it. But I like walking around, meeting artists, talking to people, and sometimes doing business or making connections. Um, I'm not a con person naturally. I don't. I should be. I wanna have my own table and do stuff and working on some things I'm gonna show later. But you know, I have a hard time with crowds.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a club person. I've gone to clubs, but I'm like off to the side. If you get a table, guy our drinks, where. But to be at the bar yelling with people, it's not for me.
Nah, man,
So
hey, that's how I am, dude. I'm an introverted recluse, man. Like I like being by myself.
yeah, but conventions are great because I love seeing the art. Me inspired
Yeah.
and like guys like talk about Joe Benitez or like those are the only time I've seen those guys. The Aspen Comics crew, Frank Mastromarro, Vince Hernandez, those guys, Peter Steigerwald. I would typically only see them at Comic Con. Maybe visit their office once a year. So it was nice to see them. You know, um, you know, somebody like J. Scott Campbell, who now he would come in, so I would see him sometimes at Sideshow. But a lot of times you see him at convention, you say hi, hello. At that point, you know who you are. You hang out, you see him, it's cool. But other than that, I look at art and then I get away.
Yeah. Damn. Walton says, "Hey man, Cash, chatting on YouTube is pretty much the extent of my socializing this dude." Man, it's crazy because I
Yeah.
come on here and people think I'm a talkative person, but I'm really very quiet and I keep to myself a lot, and I'm kind of always in like the thoughts in my head, and um, I'm
To me,
always
you,
just kind
you
of
seem that way. Like you have one, you're capable of listening, and second, your questions are introspective. So it shows that you have a more, you know,
yeah.
relaxed character, if you will.
Yeah, no doubt, man.
Um,
So a couple questions we have here, and just to go back to that earlier, in case you didn't see it, Emil Carter says we will do it, JP, sooner than later. We'll make it
yeah,
happen.
he's right. I'm the one that's behind. I'm the failure here, not him.
Oh man. So, G-
When you're designing for a genius, you kind of
oh,
get a little nervous.
J Rob says, if you could be in charge of a particular line, what would it be?
Silverhawks.
Hmm.
Um, and I would want to do them in inspired by like the new Iron Man kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
And then it looks like the next question is, JP, who's your favorite YouTuber?
Okay, now when I get on YouTube, I watch car stuff. So,
Jeleno?
um, yeah, sometimes he's I like the cars. He's not my flavor, but I watch there's an English guy JWW. I like his
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Chris Harris is a car guy. I love his stuff. Shmi 150. I like his stuff. I just watch car stuff, man. And then sports, ESPN. They're not really YouTubers per se, but yeah, I listen to sports
Yeah.
stuff. I'm
Okay.
not on YouTube for statues or art or anything. I just what I'm saying. I watch my basketball, fast cars. I'm out of here.
Okay. Okay. So basketball, real quick. That's how I'll end it with basketball. So I'll remember to get back to basketball as soon as we wrap it up. So a question here is: have you ever had someone ink your pencils? How do you feel about it? Is that a thing?
Yes. The first time it happened, the inker was a borderline pro. Um, and he had done some good work on other people, but he had no idea what to do on my art, and it was horrible, and I didn't like it.
What
Um,
does ink your pencils mean? Is
oh, it's like for comic books, if somebody draws the line art with pencil, and like the ink, the black ink is actually done by someone else using a brush or a croak wheel.
Oh, okay, okay,
So if you've ever seen Jim Lee's drawings,
yeah,
they look one way, and Scott Williams typically inks Jim Lee. So the Jim Lee look is actually a lot of times coming from Scott Williams. Just
okay,
like if you ever saw J. Scott Campbell's art back in the 90s, the finished look came from Alex Garner. So when Alex Garner would leak somebody, you would see vestiges of, if that makes sense.
gotcha.
Um, yeah, I ink myself. I Number one, I'm the best inker that I can afford. Um, and nowadays with comic stuff that I've done, you can color the pencil color, you can full paint. But I've inked my own stuff. I did a cover to Soulfire. I don't know if you can find it. Aspen Comics. Inked it all myself, colored myself. It was just easier. But yeah,
Yeah,
if you
dude,
know any good
that's
inkers, I'll give them a test.
let's see here. Is this the 2004 comic?
I don't know what you're looking at. Um,
Give me one second here. Oh no, something completely different came up. Let me see. Give me one second.
yeah, I'm gonna try to find it too. I should have probably just sent you these things.
No, it's all good. Let's see.
uh, Gosh, it does. But anyway, I did covers for a series called Artifact One, and I
Hmm.
just inked those. Um, hmm,
Yeah, for some reason it's not pulling up for me, but no biggie. Actually, I got a let's see, a like convention a convention had actually pulled up of of Soulfire Core, and there was like a picture of you, but now for some reason, oh yeah, here it goes.
Oh,
That's all that came up.
no, you know what? That's in the sideshow conference room. That
Oh
was
wow, okay. I see the
me
pieces in the
and
back.
so me and Frank had just done a live show debuting the Fathom statue.
Okay.
And then Frank brought a bunch of like Michael Turner original art that we were showing. Oh my god, like, amazing. Um, it's crazy when you see pieces in a book. Like, so I'd seen these pieces printed in like 1998, 99, 2000.
Yeah.
And then Frank brings them in 2017. So it's been like 19 years since I've seen this art. Now I'm seeing it full size. Oh my god. So yeah, so that was the inks for the Soulfire cover, and then I ended up coloring it. I couldn't find a color version online, but I have the actual book somewhere around here. But anyway, yeah, so it's just easier to ink myself. Like I know how to do it. It's faster, you know.
Yeah. This
Um,
looks good, man. This looks really good.
no, thanks.
Was this during so this right here wasn't during the J. Scott Campbell days?
Oh no, no. I'm a lot younger than those guys. This that one was like within the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you mean by camp? You mean like when I was looking at his style?
Yeah, and I only asked because of the wings. Because right now he has like a Tinkerbell that's out, and I
Oh,
was seeing is there any
oh,
correlation. I'm just looking at the wings
mm,
specifically.
no. So, um, this character was created. I don't know exactly when, but I'm thinking late '90s, early 2000s. The book came out in like 0203, 2003. Um, G. Scott Campbell's Tinkerbell stuff. I'm not sure when he started doing that, but back then he was doing Danger Girl when that stuff was going on, or Wildsiders. I think not a lot of people know that book, but yeah, this no. Turner just created originally this character was going to be called Dragonfly. I remember it in Wizard magazine like in the late '90s.
Okay.
It was just it's a character he created, and then or Firefly, something like that. Firefly. Anyways, he didn't want to do anything that overlapped with other stuff, so he ended up calling it Soulfire. Um, but yeah, he did this. So he did Witchblade, and then went to his series Fathom, and then he did some crossovers with Tomb Raider. And then when he started his own company, he took Fathom with him, and then later he created this. And he died during the. He didn't finish the series, the first series. Joe Benitez finished it for him, so he was of this character. So yeah, and I, again, they were doing another series years later, and while I
Mm-hmm.
was working at Sideshow, I did this as a freelance job. And we
Nice.
were trying to time it to come out around the same time as the statue and kind of promote it that way. But yeah, it was fun. Like working on
Yeah.
one of the icons characters. It's kind of cool.
No doubt, man. No doubt. So J. Rob said his question for you is JP. If you could do an R&B group, what group and why?
What do you mean by do? Like join the group, draw them, sing with them, or what? What is?
I would assume draw.
Okay. Now I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm not a real R&B fan. Um, it's not my type of music. But let's go just hip hop. Can we do that? Can I just like jump over?
Yeah, anything, man.
Uh I think Tupac is just an interesting human being. I remember his first album, Tupacalypse Now,
Uh huh.
and he had this song, um, a girl named Brenda. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
heard that.
Brenda's having a baby. Yeah.
Man, first time I heard that, I just wanted to cry, man. I was like, this is, you know. So to me that song kind of like has some R&B sensibilities and had a lot of things going on. But he was an artist that to me were really, yeah, he did all the loud hip hop gangster stuff, but I thought he brought a certain soul to it. Um, I don't know that much about R&B or its history, so that it's hard for me to answer that. Um, and then you have the other you have pop, like it's like a Michael Jackson thing.
Hmm.
My favorite Michael Jackson, I just want to point that out, is the video Scream he did with Janet, with
Yeah.
like the anime characters and the spaceship is all black and white. Um, I don't know if that gives you a sense of what my range of interests are, but R&B, I didn't grow up with it, so I don't know. I don't know much about it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely, no problem. I mean, for me, like I'll pretty much listen to a little bit of anything. Like usually every show before every show. Today I wasn't, kind of like crunch time, but I normally play like some James Brown right before the show starts, or I'll play like rock and roll or just anything, man. Just anything that just kind of like, hey, we about to start, type deal, and kind of get into it. Looks like the last question here is JP. Where else can we find your work? Do you have an art station or something similar?
I have an art station with nothing on it. I have an Instagram. I just sent you a link that has the colored Soulfire both covers.
Okay, yeah. Let me pull that
Um,
up.
yeah, I have
Oh
my
wow.
my domain mavinga.com, and then I have Instagram. Those are the main places I post. I used to post on DeviantArt. You can find older stuff there. I don't really go there much. Um,
That's nice.
yeah, thanks. I'm
Yeah,
working
that's
on
nice.
a new like all new website.
Oh,
I'm gonna have a my goal is to have a store there so people can buy, sketches and things like that or commissions. So that will still be through mavinga.com. Um,
dude,
but
that's
yeah,
crazy to see. Like, cause we just saw the drawing of it a couple minutes ago, and now we see it like colored and on a book. That's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy, man.
yeah, it's that piece was fun. It was really, and it's when you're doing art like that, like the thing about comics that's hard is if you're like in a machine where one guy draws, one guy inks, one guy colors, man or woman, I'm not, anybody.
Yeah,
And then, there's a writer, everybody and the editors like dishing out the work. Everybody's kind of like myopic in what they're doing. So sometimes you get like the inker doesn't fully understand the pencils, and then the colorist doesn't understand what they're doing, so the light is coming from a different direction or a different, you know what I mean? But when you're doing everything, you can ink in such a way that you're going to color it a certain way, and then I can knock out like certain lines that were there. I can knock them out and like make it softer and things like that. So you know that helps. Like her hand with that glowing hand, like all the line art is like knocked out to white, so it's not like a hard line. Um, it just you get better results, but it's not often that somebody's going to pay you to do the whole process. In this case, I was doing a cover. I just was paid to do the whole process. It's fine.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, so to find me, mavinga.com or Instagram. I have like a Facebook page. I don't do much with right now, but people can add me like as a person on Facebook. I'll add friends, fans, whatever. I'm not, you know. Um, yeah,
yeah. No
and
doubt, man. No doubt. So my final question for you, and usually I'll say, hey, what is characters or comics or statues. But I'm gonna switch it up this time because you had mentioned basketball before. So I have a Mount Rushmore question, right? And we all know the Mount Rushmore.
uh
Whether
oh.
it's Michael Jordan, Kareem, Hakeem, Wilt, Bill Russell, whoever. Um, you as a basketball fan, who is on your Mount Rushmore, whether it's current players or past? Who's on your Mount Rushmore?
So we're talking ultimate Mount Rushmore or favorite, just favorite.
Personal, yeah, personal favorite, yeah.
Because to me, the ultimate Mount Rushmore has guys that like. To me, Kareem's on there, but Kareem's not my favorite to watch. I mean,
Okay.
I saw tail end Kareem. I've seen footage of prime Kareem, like he was nice, but you know what I'm saying. He's not. You know, I like Olajuwon much more. Olajuwon just abused David Robinson in '95 in a way that, like, you understand, coaches were trying to get me to play in the post at that time. I didn't understand it, right? And then I watched Shaquem and I was like,
Footwork.
oh, okay, okay. Those
Footwork.
are soccer moves, soccer moves. Okay. And then I started like messing with people. Um, so my personal favorite Mount Rushmore basketball players, I would have Allen Iverson,
Oh,
AI. Now he wouldn't be on my ultimate Mount Rushmore best players, but my favorite.
yep.
I like AI because when I got to Virginia, those guys I was hooping with,
Oh, yeah.
this
That's where
was
he's from, yeah.
'94. They were like, because I was like, oh man, I love Iverson. He's at Georgetown at the time, and they were like, AI played football, right? And I was like, oh, he's just kidding. And they were like, so they went and
Quarterback,
got me
yeah.
tape. Our team, EC Glass, playing Bethel, and he ran like a 80 some yard punt return, right? And my
Wait, wait, wait,
friend is
wait,
showing
wait.
me this.
You played against AI?
No, I played ball against guys who played football against AI.
Oh, okay.
So I was, so they were like juniors and seniors. I was a
Yeah.
sophomore, and they had played against AI when they were like freshmen, sophomore, right? Because he was in
Gotcha.
college
Okay.
at that point.
Yeah.
But they're showing me grainy tape, and I was like, and they're like, yeah, that's Dion. You know, that's Joe. Right? And they're telling me like who he's just sliding by the entire. And that time, the team had the best defense in the state. This was football, and I was like, oh. They were basically trying to recruit me to play football, and I ran the routes. I could turn on a dime. I couldn't catch, and I did not like to get hit. And the first
Hey.
time I got hit, I got rocked, and I was like, never again. And so they tried to play because I couldn't catch, so they like did a real handoff just to see what I could do. I ran a touchdown. This was just practice, right? Only because I didn't want anybody to touch me. I was so scared, right? And they couldn't use me because
Yeah.
I would have to play receive, but I couldn't catch. In defense, I wasn't going to tackle anybody. So like, all right. But anyway,
Oh man.
Allen Iverson, I love his game, and
Yep.
there's just that little bit of almost home connection. I would have to put Olajuwon on there because the creativity, the beauty, the grace. I think he showed people, um, him and Jordan in that time, and I put Jordan on there. Those are my three. And basketball can be artistry, truly.
Yeah.
Just not just the most effective way to put the ball in the hoop, like Karl Malone. I'm talking full on artistry and expression. You're talking about you're watching jazz. And then, so it would be AI, Akeem, Iverson, and then I put Steph Curry just because
Mm.
we all tried to shoot. Even those of us that were shooters, it was never like that. And with the handles, I think
Yeah.
he's just an artist. I love what Kyrie can do with the ball. I think he's the probably the best with the ball that there's ever been.
Over AI.
Kyrie,
Yeah.
yeah, I think AI would say that too
Okay. Okay.
because AI was. If you watch, AI went one hand. He couldn't. He could change. He would attack with one hand.
Mm.
AI was a
That's what you're saying. Yeah.
superior leaper, a superior athlete. He was probably quicker. But Kyrie with the ball, if you watch all the handling, forwards, backwards, it could attack with either hand, in the air, off the glass, all the English. He has the best. He has all the ball handling that everybody's ever had. He's got
Yeah.
AIs, Magics, Isaiah. Steph Curry's is tighter. It's more fundamentals correct. I think he's just as good, but he can't bring it out. Kyrie can bring it out, bring it back in. He's just, I just don't, I don't like his decision as a player. I don't like his attitude. So for me, and I think Steph is just a more effective player. So my personal Mount Rushmore: Allen Iverson, Akeem Olajuwon, Michael Jordan, and Steph Curry.
Man, no doubt. That's
Yeah,
a good list. My personal would be uh, AI, Kobe, Steph, and MJ. I know I'm leaving off a big
I love it.
man. So if I had to say a big man for me, um, he got 80 nicknames, man. The big Aristotle,
Shaq,
everything.
yeah.
Shaq, man. Like, as a kid, I was just
Yeah.
like, how can you can't stop this? You
No.
cannot stop this dude. Like, I seen Tim Duncan try, I seen Kevin Garnett try. You, you couldn't stop him. So,
I love it when they get on TV and they talk about best this, best that, ultimate. It's like it's really subjective.
oh
But to
yeah,
me,
yeah,
when you if you take the peak of someone and you compare everybody's peak, um, no center I don't think was ever better than Shaq. I don't care what you say about
yeah,
Wilt or anybody because they could not stop him.
yeah.
He was that big, strong, athletic, and I think he got slower when he got a little older. But Orlando Shaq could
Orlando
sprint,
Shack, yeah, yeah,
and so I look at that and I'm like, man, Olajuwon. In fact, Olajuwon played power forward a lot again because in the '80s, I think Moses Malone was still there.
mm,
So to me, if you're doing that, you could put Olajuwon as your power forward, Shaq as your center. But yeah, Shaq is
man, yeah. That's crazy.
his own species.
Yeah,
You
no
know.
doubt, man, no doubt. Um, you know, okay. I'll ask one last question. This
Sure.
is so there's a cartoon called Family Guy, and they do a segment called "You Know What Really Grinds My Gears."
Okay.
So I equate it to "Now You Know." Is there anything that you like to get off your chest? Anything about the community? Anything about whether it's drawing, professional? Anything that you just want people to know? Anything you could change? You could make better? Anything? Why no
Man.
Magic? Hey, shout out to Magic Johnson, man. Magic Johnson's a heck of a player, man. I'm just taking AI. That's
Yeah.
all I'm saying.
When you make these lists, man, it depends on what you want. I think
Yeah,
Magic was brilliant. If you were doing a Mount Rushmore of smartest players, you gotta have Magic. If you're doing the best showman, you're gonna have Magic. Best athletes, you'd have Vince, right?
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
anyway, it depends on your list. Gosh, things to get off my chest. Okay, I think for all the people watching this, and maybe that will watch this, invest more time in listening. And when I say listening, it's not just the words ringing in your ears, it's enter the other person's perspective. Spend time with it. If they're saying something that you don't know anything about, make a note, jot it down, go read about what they're talking about, and understand. One of the most insightful things I've ever heard is if you think someone's wrong, it's because you can explain their argument better than they can first. You have to be able to explain to them what they're saying so that they agree and say, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. And then break it down beyond what they're saying. That's how you can say someone else is wrong.
Nice.
You see what I'm saying? And I think right now, this whole internet, social media, our politics, even all these race issues, is because people just aren't listening. And listening requires, people use the word empathy a lot, but I'm going to go compassion. Because empathy, you can get mad when somebody's mad or happy. No, compassion is a specific thing. I'm focused on taking in what you're saying. And if there's anything that's it's the way the world and a lot of things are right now, particularly on the internet, right? Um, all the hater stuff and all the the anger and the division, and it's like, yes, there are some crazy lunatic people, yes,
Yeah.
and that's a small percentage, and the rest of the people probably have a point. And so, conservative, liberal, in between, listen to each other. There's a war going on right now in Ukraine. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The only reason I'm here and I can't be in the Congo is because of wars. I don't know my native language. I can't speak to my grandmother. She doesn't speak French or English
Wow.
because of divisions of people, because of wars. You know what I'm saying? I don't have a home from a geographical perspective of like, I know that place. I'm just where I am local. My home is the whole earth. Really, it's like when I'm sitting in an airplane, that's when I feel like I'm at home because of wars, because of ideologies, and people can't listen to each other. You know what I'm saying? I've seen art projects and gigs go sideways because people aren't really listening to each other, not paying attention. Lost opportunities. You see relationships fall apart, you see families fall apart, you see all kinds of stuff because people aren't listening. It's very hard to oppress a people group if they're your friend. And, you know, you can be mad at somebody you love, and I get it. But at the end of the day, when you love someone or you care about them, friend, whatever, they're a piece of your heart. You can't damage that. You know what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
that's what I would leave with whoever is watching and watches this is, start by really, really listening. Invest your time, invest your mind in what other people are saying before you
Man.
say what you have to say, because maybe they'll listen to you as well. You might just find a new friend. So yeah, that's what I would say.
That's real. That's real. That's real powerful. Some weeks I'll join in as well, and I'll say something I have to get off my chest. Um, so I'll say this time. Um, Earlier I mentioned that I'm not really a big talker, or anything like that. Maybe due to being an only child, and I grew up with my great grandmother, who I consider my mother. She raised me, and around your elders, you always had to kind of sit back and not speak out of term and stuff like that. Um, one of the earlier jobs I received, there was an older gentleman. He was maybe 70 years old. He was really helping me out. His name was Mr. Blaine Looper. Mr. Looper, I said, hey man, I'm not understanding the job. I'm gonna quit. And he said, "How can you quit?" He said, "Do you know where some of your ancestors are from?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You mean to tell me people could be in ships and they could come over? You thought they quit?" I said, "Most likely not, man. They got here." He said, "The number one thing you can do right now to learn what you have to do is use two things." I said, "What are those?" He said, "Use your ears. All you got to do is listen. Listen to what somebody is telling you. Just listen and view from their perspective and their point. If there's anything you don't understand, you've listened, you've retained it. Now articulate it back to them to make sure you understood what they just said." So that's the reason why I learned to be more of a listener, so I can articulate what I want to say to make sure we're always on the same page. And a lot of people say, "Hey, Michael, how are you good with interviewing and stuff like that?" And I say, "Well, before I started up the show, I sat back and I watched. I watched Arsenio Hall. I watched Jay Leno. I watched Howard Stern. I watched Oprah Winfrey. I watched those people that I felt were some of the best of the best. And then I came on and I started. Because it was important to know the history of interviewing, the questions to ask. For example, I may not ask JP the same questions as I would ask a Todd from Spec Fiction. I may not ask you the same questions I would ask the owner of Sideshow, for example. Like, the questions, they have to be different based on what the individual brings. And of course, we're getting to know the individual, but that's why I feel like it's very important, and I agree with you 110%. Listening is more powerful than anything you can ever say. You have to listen.
Truth.
Yeah.
On
I
that
just
we
want to
agree.
say, yeah, man. I just want to say I appreciate you coming. It's crazy because I look at the ticker and it says 2 hours and 12 minutes. It always goes by quick.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, appreciate that, Piggy. Great conversation. Dominic says great interview. No doubt, man. I appreciate everybody from coming from start to finish. All 30 people that showed up, I appreciate you guys. And the people who are going to watch afterwards, appreciate you guys for watching as well. JP, again, I cannot thank you enough. I appreciate you, and I'm glad I was able to get to talk to you, get to have you on. Again, thanks, Milcar, for definitely was right. Like, I got that same feeling with him, as I'm able to sit back and just soak in everything. So I can't thank you enough. I would definitely love to have you back on in the future, and I'll definitely, obviously stay in touch with you. And again, it's been a pleasure, man. Pleasure.
Hey, thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed it. And anytime, I have, when I have things coming up, I'll let you know. But it was an honor to be here. And for all the fans, the people you have watching, like, I just want to thank all of you for watching, participating. People that buy the product, we those of us that do this stuff only have jobs because of the support.
Yeah.
And I can't thank those people enough. And so, you're the ones that make it all possible. So choose wisely.
No doubt, man. And
No,
once this
thanks.
is over, I'm gonna ask you something off screen. But and the last thing I'll say is this: it's crazy when you get to know and meet the people that are working on the amazing pieces. And now the fact that I know I'm gonna get that Mr. Freeze, it's almost like, not to be like weird or anything, but it's almost like I got a little bit of JP right here. You know what I'm saying? So that'll
Hey,
be
it's
kind
all
of
good.
cool, and I can appreciate that piece a lot more. But again, everybody, thank you guys for coming, and like I said, man, hey, cash out, baby.
Put some cash in your life, put some cash in your life.